Have you ever stopped to think about what a company really is? I mean, it's not just an office building or a cool logo. In the eyes of the law, it's something way more interesting, way more powerful. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something called the corporate veil. It's this legal shield that separates a business from its owners, and trust me, it's the bedrock of pretty much all modern business.
So let's just kick things off with a question that sounds, well, a little weird. Is a company a person? I mean, it can't have a favorite movie or feel hungry, right? But legally, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. And once you really get your head around this idea of corporate personality, everything else we talk about is going to click right into place.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on what the corporate veil actually is. Then, we're going to take a little trip back in time to the one single court case that basically created this whole idea. After that, we'll look at what it takes to lift the veil. And finally, we'll dive into the specific times when the law decides to peek behind that curtain.
All right, let's dive into the concept itself. If you want to understand how modern business works, you absolutely have to understand the corporate veil. Think of it as rule number one.
So what is this veil? At its core, it's a powerful legal idea that says a company is its own person. It is completely separate and distinct from the people who own it, the shareholders. That legal well of separation, that is the veil that stands between the business and the people behind it.
The best way to picture it is as a legal shield. So if the company goes into debt or if it gets sued, that shield protects the personal stuff of the owners. We're talking their houses, their cars, their savings. The company might be in hot water, but they personally are safe. And this is a huge, huge deal. It's what gives people the guts to invest their money and take the risks you need to start new businesses in the first place.
But an idea this revolutionary doesn't just appear out of thin air. Nope. It was actually forged in the fire of a single landmark legal battle that completely changed the world of business forever.
And that case is Salomon versus Salomon and Co Limited. Before this case, the line between a business owner and their company was kind of blurry. This case came along and drew a very, very clear line in the sand. So here's the story in a nutshell. You've got this guy, Mr. Salomon. He sells his successful business to a brand new company that he just created. The only shareholders were him and his family. He also loaned this new company a bunch of money, which made him a secured creditor. All that means is that if the company went belly up, he was first in line to get paid back. And, things went wrong. The company failed. The other creditors were absolutely furious. They argued that Salomon the guy and Salomon the company were really the same thing, and that it was a total sham for him to pay himself back before anyone else.
But the court saw it differently. In a historic ruling, the House of Lords dropped this bombshell of a quote. They said, the company is, at law, a different person altogether from its members. And that was it. Even if one person owns almost all the shares, the company is still its own legal entity. Mr. Salomon, the man, was separate from Salomon and Co. Ltd., the company, period. Now, that decision created this incredibly powerful shield for business owners. But it also opened up a whole new can of worms. What happens when people start using that shield to do shady things? And that brings us to the whole idea of lifting the corporate veil. So the big question becomes, is this shield unbreakable? I mean, can you really just hide behind it no matter what? Because if it was totally absolute, it would be the perfect tool for fraud. The answer the courts came up with? Nope. It's not unbreakable. This is what we call lifting the corporate veil. It's that moment when a court says, okay, we're going to ignore the fact that the company is a separate person for a minute. They pierce right through that shield to look at the reality of who's actually pulling the strings. And when that happens, suddenly the owner's personal assets are right back in the firing line. So what does it take for a court to do something that drastic? It's not something they do lightly, that's for sure. But there are a handful of pretty clear situations where that shield is coming down. Okay. We're going to walk through the 5 big scenarios. Courts might lift the veil to figure out a company's true character. Think wartime. They'll definitely do it to protect government revenue when someone's trying to dodge taxes. They'll do it if a company was set up just to avoid a legal duty. They'll also look through it if a subsidiary is basically just a puppet for its parent company. And the big one, they'll lift it to prevent fraud or other crimes. Let's break them down. First up is determining a company's true character. Now, a company itself can't be your friend or your enemy, right? But imagine it's wartime. A court might lift the veil to see who is actually controlling the company. If it turns out the people in charge are from an enemy nation, then the company itself can be legally classified as an enemy company.
Next, and this is a really common one, is protecting tax revenue. Check out this classic case. This wealthy guy created a whole bunch of shell companies just to hold his investments. He had the companies pay him his income back, but he called them loans, also he could avoid paying taxes. The court, well, they weren't fooled at all. They called the companies a total sham, lifted the veil, and made him pay the taxes he owed on his real income.
The veil also gets lifted when a company tries to wiggle out of its legal duties. In one instance, a company wanted to pay smaller bonuses to its employees. So what did it do? It created a brand new subsidiary, a smaller company it owned, and moved its most profitable assets over there. This trick made the main company's profits look way smaller on paper. The Supreme Court saw right through it, lifted the veil, and treated both companies as a single entity to figure out the real bonus that was owed. You know, sometimes a subsidiary company isn't really an independent business at all. It's just an agent or like a puppet for the parent company. For example, there was a case where a transport company set up a subsidiary just so it could apply for some licenses that it couldn't get on its own. The court looked at the whole setup and said, nope, you're one single business unit, and threw out the application.
And finally, we've got the biggest, broadest category of all, fraud or improper conduct. This is basically the catch-all. If a company is created for any kind of illegal purpose, to trick creditors, to get around a law, or for any other shady reason, a court will not hesitate for a second to lift that veil and hold the people behind it responsible. So let's bring this all home. What's the big takeaway? The fundamental idea is that a company is its own legal person, and it's protected by this corporate veil. That shield is absolutely vital for business and for the economy. But, and this is the key, it is not absolute. When that shield is being used not to encourage business, but to deceive, to defraud, or to escape justice, the law is going to step in, lift that veil, and look at the reality of who is really in control. And that, right there, is the central balancing act of all of company law. The corporate veil is essential. It encourages the kind of investment and risk-taking that fuels our entire economy. But it can also be abused. And that leaves us with the ultimate question for courts and for lawmakers. Where exactly do you draw the line between a legitimate corporate shield and just a convenient place to hide?